I knew that we were destined to do something great.
Of course, you know, I'm a little afraid. And once we started reading, and then there were a couple laughs here and there, I think I pretty much was all set. Like, I wasn't nervous anymore.
We fit and gelled from hour one, and it still hasn't stopped till today. It was just perfect casting.
The network decided to give the show a chance, but just barely. It would air as a summer replacement series with only 4 episodes. Since the show no longer had anything to do with Cooley High, it needed a new title. The producers asked the cast for ideas.
I'm a New Yorker. We're walking around saying, you know, what's happening? I'm like, man, you got to call this thing What's Happening. And they all looked at me. They said, what's happening? I said, what's happening?
Hey, Dwayne, Rerun. Hey, what's up, Rerun? Come on.
They went, yeah, and went with it.
What's Happening premiered on August 5th, 1976. As a summer replacement series, it had only 4 chances to hook in viewers.
In the first episode, Raj wants to get his mother a birthday present.
Well, how much money you got to buy her a present? $2.
So the guys, we go out shopping with what little bit we were able to put together, and we find this blouse.
How's this? Oh, yeah, that looks good. You got another one for my mama?
I asked the price of the blouse, and it's $8. I don't have the money.
There's only one way I'm gonna get that other $6.
How's that?
I'm gonna have to get down on my knees and pray for a miracle. Come on, miracle.
And so I win the money, and that's when Dee tells on me.
Should I tell Roger to come downstairs and stop playing dice and say hello?
Is he upstairs playing dice again?
Oh my, did I say that?
And that was, I guess, America's kind of first exposure to this little bratty girl who says, you know, she's going to tell Mama.
Mama takes the money, so we go back and we kind of take the blouse and we get caught.
I wasn't really stealing it. I was just trying to see how it looked in the light.
And they take us into the room with the manager. He says, and I called your mother. And that is the worst.
I want to hear a word out of you.
Mama became the central figure of everything that mattered to us, what we respected, and you didn't want to let her down.
Give me that belt.
Mama!
You can have mine.
The white audience saw for the first time, this is not June Cleaver. This is not Leave to Beaver.
Get your butt upstairs.
Mama will whoop that butt, you know what I mean?
Happy birthday, Mama.
Eventually, Mama gets a blouse, and she's happy that I was thoughtful.
Mama?
Yeah, baby.
I can't breathe. Sometimes she loved them too much. Mama, I can't breathe. That was hilarious.
Audiences loved it too. And What's Happening's ratings reflected that popularity over the first 4 episodes.
They were just an interesting family. There was humor, there was sadness, there was angst. I think a lot of America could relate to that.
The absentee father episode, that was a tough one for me, because I had the absentee father.
Who was it?
That was your daddy.
Danielle, her father wasn't there.
Did I ever see him, Mama?
Not so you'd remember him. He left home about a month after you were born.
It became so real.
How are you, son?
Hello, Dad.
And he said, hey, son, you know, that word I had never heard. And we got so emotional. And Bud York like, cut. What the hell is going on here? This is a comedy.
D.
Come on, D. Go to Dad.
Probably was also one of the first shows that showcased a single-parent household. And it really kind of set the tone and mirrored what was to come in America.
The innocence of that and the way it was presented, it made it a show that was really for everybody, in my opinion. People genuinely loved it and loved us.
But some viewers and critics complained that the show took place in a kind of bubble, away from the harsh realities of race.
They happened to be black, live in South Central, but it never really got into big sociological issues at all.
I think the producers made another conscious effort not to have a depressing thing about the show. They were enjoying their lives. And I think it was important. I think that gave inspiration to people in any inner city that we can have joy and happiness. There were some critics of the show that said that it was stereotypical because the mother was a maid.
He is a supervisor of domestic maintenance in private residence.
Sounds like a maid to me.
I think it was stereotypical in a lot of ways. We didn't purposely think of that as we were doing it, but I plead guilty to some of that, sure.
I was okay with the script because I realized this is going to appeal to a larger audience, but we have to represent as African Americans. We got to bring the heat, and we got to make sure it's authentic.
All ABC knew is that what's happening was happening, and the network gave the go-ahead for a full season of 17 episodes. But for the bubbly sitcom that never got too heavy, things were about to take a tragic turn.
The thing that's most vivid in my mind is waiting to hear if she's alive or not.
Thomas, who plays Raj, and his friends Rerun and Dwayne, played by Fred Berry and Haywood Nelson Jr.
In November of 1976, What's Happening became a permanent member of ABC's primetime Thursday lineup. By winter, it was one of the top 25 rated series on TV. The show was propelled by its 4 youngest stars, and each of them brought something unique to the party.
Hey, hey, hey.
I knocked on the door, and I just blew it out. Hey, hey, hey. And the girls went, ah! And I was like, oh, yeah.
Hey, hey, hey.
That was great, kid. Do it again. You do it every single week. Every single week. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey. I mean, people still say that to this day.
That laugh, says it all. The laugh and the Raj dance. You'd have to be a devil not to like Raj. You know what I mean? You'd have to really be a devil not to like this guy,
What do you call this dance, Roger? The funky klutz.
She could deliver a line like a pro. She had the timing, and she always made it platinum.
I bring my father down to school with me, and my mama will never find out.
But suppose someone tells her.
She did not see little black girls in major roles on TV. And Dee started it. They had it in Good Times with Janet Jackson. They had it in The Cosby Show with Rudy.
Entertainment Weekly said it best, that she's probably the funniest child actor ever in TV history, and I agree with that.
She was an old lady in a little girl's body. She's just perfect.
Fred was a very talented, beautiful dancer. What's Happening was his moonlight job, but dancing was his life.
Go ahead, Rerun.
Whenever he had a chance, he would dance on that show.
Complete joy every day. It wasn't work. It's a lot of fun. And it comes from the freedom that the director granted us to create. When you have that freedom as an ensemble, it allows you to get deeper into trust with that person you're playing with.
The cast remained tight off the set, too. After work, the party was on, especially once the big checks began to roll in.
I was in Malibu. Now, that was when life really was heaven on earth.
Ernest had a fantastic house. It was all glass on the side facing the ocean. When we finished taping on Friday nights, everyone drove to Ernest's house. Producers, writers, directors, actors. He had no furniture. So all he did was, the music was cranked, folks had their drinks going, and people were dancing.
The growing closeness was about to be deepened in the worst of ways.
One morning, we get there and we need to have this reading, and no Danielle. Danielle was never late, ever.
On September 7th, 1977, Danielle and her father, actor Tim Pelt, were in a car crash.
Cheryl calls, says that they had been in a car accident on Pacific Coast Highway, and they were in Santa Monica Hospital, and that we all needed to get there right away.
As soon as I go through the doors of the hospital, the cast all came around and grabbed me. I already know it's death.
The thing that's most vivid in my mind is being at the hospital in the waiting room and waiting to hear if she's alive or not.
Finally, they come to us and say, okay, so Danielle's been beat up pretty bad. She's gone through surgery, and we've repaired all of it. It's going to be a long time for her, but she's going to be fine. How about Tim? What's going on with Tim? Says, Tim is the hero here. He protected Danielle and held her from really getting destroyed.
And so, you know, we were smashed, and my stepfather, actually, he died because he was like reaching over to try to protect me, and the steering wheel, you know, somehow ruptured his organs. I was in a coma for 3 weeks, so I don't even know what happened. I have no memory whatsoever of the accident or any time in the hospital.
It took 6 months for Danielle to recover from injuries to her spine, spleen, and face. But when she returned to the set, what's happening was in the midst of a new and very different kind of crisis.
There wasn't a room that was big enough to fill the ego that my husband had taken on.
And then the drugs kicked in. Fred wasn't like that, you know, until he got on the drugs.
Martin, every weekday morning at 9 on TV1.
I remember actually the first couple of weeks on the show, I was just excited that I had $20 a week allowance. So I made it a point to get a Barbie doll every single week. You know, get a house or car, whatever she had going on. I wanted to make sure I had that for Barbie. That was probably, you know, one of the best times of my life in terms of my childhood.
By late 1977, What's Happening was in its second season and a prime time smash. For the cast, life was changing quickly.
I was going during the week in Beverly Hills and shopping and buying these incredible outfits at this ridiculous price, and then jumping on planes and flying to New York. And we're going to Studio 54 and Xenons. We're partying. We're hanging out with Mick, with Rod Stewart. We're hanging. I'm living.
Everywhere you go, people know you and they love you. It's more money than I ever had in my life. Shaka Khan knocks on your door in a string bikini. Hi, I'm Shaka Khan. I don't know you, but I enjoy the show. You mind if I get in your pool? Make a president forget his presidency and preacher leave the pulpit, you know what I'm saying? Life was too good to be true.
First you take a piece of meat, then you boil it in some heat, then you shove it in a bun, but you've just begun the fun. Yeah.
On screen, Rerun was becoming the breakout star of the show. Off it, Fred Berry was losing himself in the part of Rerun and fueling the character's manic energy with cocaine.
He started to believe the hype. He had evolved into this character, that Rerun character. I could not stand that Rerun character.
There was a dark side to him as well. There was a violent side to him.
I came out one night during one of the very many parties, and there was this sparkly, shiny tennis ball. It turns out the tennis ball was cocaine in a ball this big.
When Fred was sober, he was a lovable Fred Berry. On cocaine, he wasn't.
Fred Berry, it turned out, was going through an internal war. His Rerun character opened old wounds.
Shirley, we have a celebrity at our table.
Oh, yeah, I know. Jaws.
Every show, there were jokes made about his weight. It was devastating to see how this affected him. And then when the jokes started to become kind of very personal and somewhat vicious.
How do I look?
Like the Bionic Mountain.
He and Shirley, they had made a little bet to see who could lose the most weight over the hiatus. He came back to the show very proud, lean. Everyone noticed it. And they pulled my husband to the side. And they were like, no, this doesn't work for us. We need you to bulk up. And that hurt my husband. It still hurts me. And so he picked up all the weight and extra.
Francesca and Fred had met before What's Happening as fellow Soul Train and Lockers dancers. They married in 1976, but Francesca had fallen in love with Mr. Penguin and had had enough of Rerun.
The drugs just started to become an everyday thing. And I finally said one night to him, this is not part of our promise. This is not what we vowed to each other. And he was like, well, if you don't like it, then you can leave.
Keep in touch and let me know where you're at, okay? Let me know where you stand.
And I packed as much as I could into 2 bags.
At work, Fred Berry's anger turned toward the producers, who he felt weren't giving him the respect or money he deserved.
It's no secret that black actors were not paid comparable to their white counterparts during that time. So Ernest Thomas and Fred Berry wanted more money. They wanted to be paid the equivalent of what they knew their white counterparts were being paid on other shows.
He enlisted Ernest Thomas in his cause, and one day, the two walked off the set in protest.
Fred and I wanted better dressing rooms. We didn't like our dressing rooms. We thought they were really shabby.
Fred, he said something like, I'm sick of this, and he just threw the script down. I'm like, really? Is this really, is this in the script? You know, I'm like, does he have a different script?
So Fred gets up, come on, Redburn, and I followed.
They walked off the set, and the set of What's Happening was never the same again. They returned, but it was never the same.
The beefing on the set didn't stop there. Mabel King was unhappy as well. The Broadway veteran was increasingly frustrated with her one-dimensional role.
She wanted more of an expanded role. Love interest. She was a single mom. Why couldn't she have a love interest?
The common problem with adults who are kind of second banana to kids, the grown-ups are invariably annoyed or kind of feel like they're just kind of props.
Mabel asked for an increase in salary, script approval. They said no.
I'm leaving. No, don't try to stop me.
It's never a good thing when Mama decides to leave. But that's what happened at the end of season 2. The producers and Mabel King agreed to part ways.
She was the moral compass of the show. And we needed her badly, but things are what they are, you know.
Mabel's departure was coupled with a dive in the ratings. The show was moved out of the primetime lineup to ratings-unfriendly Saturday night.
I mean, how do you do that? Mabel King, Mama is not there. It's what ain't happening. It's what happened. You know, I mean, there's no way to be okay with that.
ABC moved What's Happening back to its prime Thursday slot, hoping the 3rd season would be a charm and bring back the ratings pot of gold.
Season 3 was supposed to be a blessing of a season. You've made it to 3.
But after the bitter contract fights and the departure of Mabel King, the show was struggling to find itself.
That's when Shirley moved in, and we kept saying, oh, Mama's visiting Uncle so-and-so.
But people knew that Shirley was not the adult of the family. She was more like a big sister. So they never replaced the mother role.
I want to hear your whole life story.
No way.
Why not?
Because it's boring.
Well, I am trying to go to sleep.
Mabel King was absolutely the hub of What's Happening. You pull her out of that, and now we're fishing. So now you have an introduction of a little Earl and a big Earl.
But the changes didn't click, both on and off screen.
Wow, yesterday you're my little girl, but today you're my old lady.
Little Earl was getting on my nerves, both in real life and on the show, even though I love him today.
It just didn't have the same magic. Once you dismantle that, you know, you mess with the brew, it ain't gonna taste the same. And it didn't.
The ratings start going down. and was definitely depressing for us, you know.
It didn't help that for Fred, and now Ernest, the drinking and cocaine had gotten much worse.
People all over the house and knocking on the door all times of night. I would hide in my bedroom because I'm on the coke. I mean, that's insane, you know. When I think about the piles of heroin, different grades of heroin, different grades of cocaine, where any minute the cops could come and arrest me, I think about it and I cry.
Fred and Ernest were often late or inebriated, and the producer's patience was running thin. Once again, Fred and Ernest demanded more money. This time, the producers called their bluffs.
Fred won $1 million deal. Fred called the producers racist. You know, the producers, a lot of their relatives going through the Holocaust, and the last thing they wanted to be called was racist. And they said, well, since you think we're racist, we're going to cancel the show because we don't want you working for racist.
They all wanted more, and I understand that. Every show I've ever done, they want more. And I'm sorry we couldn't do better for them. But things are what they are.
I tried to appeal to Fred, and I tried to appeal to Ernest. I was speaking on deaf ears, and, you know, and at that point, you just kind of throw your hands in the air.
Even though What's Happening's ratings had risen back into the top 30, the show was abruptly canceled in April of 1979, at the end of its third season.
When I saw in the Hollywood Reporter the show was canceled, it's just like, even though there's daylight, it was like gray just came over the sky. It was just like gray.
I was 19, and it's devastating. I uprooted my life. Dropped the fancy car, made sure my mom and dad and my brother were cool, and I bounced.
Haywood moved back to New York to pursue degrees in architecture and engineering. Danielle and her mother, Cheryl, still grieving the death of Tim Pelt, moved to Africa for a new start.
My mother didn't even tell me the show was canceled until we were there. And then also not being able to talk to my cast members about it because I was in Africa, it was really difficult.
No one took a bigger hit than Fred Berry. When What's Happening was over, he went into free fall, blowing away all his money, literally, on cocaine.
Going from, you know, having $500,000 and living in Half Moon Bay, and all of a sudden now you have nothing, and he's sleeping in my room.
The last time I saw my husband, he was sad, and he had put on quite a bit of weight. And he was lost, and he just didn't know who to trust.
Ernest Thomas wasn't faring any better.
Your friends treated you differently, you know, like you had a disease. You don't have any money. You have no fame, you know, you have no show. So you're not valuable anymore. That was hurtful.
On TV1.
Season 2, Ernest and Fred had walked off the show. The writers got this brilliant idea to write an episode around me. And I was like, oh, man. But then I had a girl in the show that I got to kiss. Love Ernest, love Fred, forgot all about him.
In the 1980s, What's Happening was history, and its young stars were stars no more. But a funny thing happened on the way to obscurity. The reruns of What's Happening were getting better ratings than the original airings.
More popular in reruns than it was on ABC primetime? That's unheard of. That just doesn't happen.
Eager to capitalize on the new generation of fans, Ernest Thomas came up with an idea for an updated version of the show. Columbia Pictures Television took a chance, and in September 1985, the syndicated-only series What's Happening Now hit the air.
They're guaranteeing us 2 years of checks. It restored our shine, it restored our dignity. Fred and I, we prayed on the phone. God gave us a second chance, Honey Brand. We're not gonna mess this up.
On What's Happening Now, Raj was pursuing his dream of writing and newly married to a social worker named Nadine, played by Anne Marie Johnson. Rerun and Dwayne had moved in together, while Dee appeared only when her character was home from college, which was true for Danielle Spencer as well.
I was only in 5 to 7 episodes for each season, so I was still able to go to college at the same time that I was shooting the series.
At first, the chemistry of the cast brought the show strong ratings.
The audience was really receptive. For first-run syndication, we were exceedingly successful.
Rerun on TV.
It's amazing what they can fit into 19 inches of screen, huh?
But a taste of the old success brought back familiar problems for Fred Berry.
The ego got to him again, and he won his $1 million deal, and it was all over the press. Everywhere they talk about this $1 million deal. And what really got them upset is when they thought he was going to negotiate and change his mind. Instead, he says, I mean exactly what I said, basically. I want my $1 million, and that was the nail in the coffin. That was it.
After only one season, Fred Berry was fired from the show.
It just wasn't the same after that. And we did 3 years. I mean, we did another 60-odd episodes.
And they kept writing him shallower and shallower and more ridiculous. And I'm saying, you know, what did you get yourself into? What are you doing?
What's Happening Now was canceled in 1988 after 3 seasons. The cast, who had been like family for much of the past 10 years, went their separate ways. Shirley Hemphill went on to enjoy a successful stand-up career before dying of sudden kidney failure in 1999. A month earlier, Mabel King had passed after a long-time struggle with diabetes.
She was in the hospital for motion picture actors, and I know that she had her legs amputated due to the diabetes, and it was devastating to all of us.
Despite lingering injuries from her childhood car crash, Danielle Spencer has realized a lifelong dream of becoming a veterinarian, and she's recently returned to her first love, acting. Haywood Nelson, who has worked in the high-tech industry since the 90s, recently launched a 3D technology company. Ernest Thomas would need to hit rock bottom before finally turning his life around.
It got so bad, you know, where I was on the pipe doing the Quaaludes and doing mushrooms. I felt like I was losing my mind, and I'm surprised that I didn't. And I cried out to God, you know, and that's when I, you know, became born again. I would not be alive and able to talk to you now if I had not been reborn again.
Ernest's career was soon reborn as well, thanks to a well-received performance in Spike Lee's Malcolm X. In 2005, Ernest found himself back on TV again, playing a recurring character on the Chris Rock-produced show, Everybody Hates Chris.
Chris Rock created the role of Mr. Omar specifically for me. And the kids want me to say his catchphrase, which is tragic, tragic! You know, I mean, I can do that all day long and they just fall out.
What's Happening's most iconic cast member found his redemption in faith as well. After years of personal struggles, Fred Berry had sobered up, married happily, and become a minister.
He would go to shelters, like we would feed the homeless on holidays. He made a mark in people's lives. He was just a person that's saying, okay, I did my dirt and I'm sorry for it.
But Berry could not escape the consequences of years of hard living. Fred Berry died of complications from a stroke on October 21st, 2003. He was 52 years old.
I sat up in the room. And I stayed with him. And I didn't know what to say to him. But a part of me was lost because I wasn't there for him.
That's when you really know you love someone, is when they're gone. It was devastating, you know. The beauty of television is you can watch these shows and relive them. I mean, it's like they're still here because you don't see the sickness, you don't see the death, you don't see a coffin, you know. You see a person alive and well.
Yeah.
We all still love each other. We all vibe with each other. We still work well together. And it's like we were kids. I mean, it's exactly the same way.
It's the kind of experience that you only share, you know, on rare occasions. And we had it every single week.
We transcended the color, and everyone could identify with that family.
What's happening was a momentous benchmark. And afterwards, I started to see the momentum picking up. Hip-hop was just starting to come into the game. Cosby Show shows up. It really changed the societal outlook on African Americans.
Now I have fans from England and France and Germany and Hong Kong and Brazil.
If somebody has never seen the show, I get a big smile on my face. And I would tell them, if you want to smile and you want to have a good time, you need to see this show.
Give me a bell.
Sorry, Mama, these are my new pants. I'm not wearing one.
Hey, Mrs. Thomas, you lose my...